Now, a figure is made up of three overlapped rectangles, A, B, and C. The area of rectangles A, B, and C is in the ratio 4 to 5 to 10. 3 out of 8 of A overlaps B, and a quarter of C overlaps B. What fraction of the figure is shaded? So we have a diagram here. So what they have given us is a whole rectangle A, a whole rectangle B, and a whole rectangle C. Now, of course, this is going to be complicated because the three rectangles are all overlapping one another. All right. And if you notice, these two shaded parts are also the overlapped areas. Okay. So all this, if we analyze the question closely, we have a ratio provided. We have two fractions provided. Now, these two fractions, we are able to write them as a ratio. All right, so you do not have to work with fractions. You can consider changing them into ratios so that later you are able to work out a common base among all your three ratios. And when I say three ratios, I'm referring to this as your first, this one is your second ratio, this one is your third ratio. Okay, so use ratio to solve this would be very helpful because once you have mastered how to apply your common base, this question is, actually pretty straightforward from there. Okay, so the first thing first, I'm going to record down the data, which is in this case, recording down my very first ratio that's provided. So 4 to 5 to 10 will be your A to B to C. So this is the whole of A, whole of B, whole of C. All right, not considering overlap or not overlap, it's just the whole rectangle itself. Now, next thing, this one, 3 out of 8 of A overlaps B. Now, okay, this is going to be tricky. How are we going to write our ratio for this? So we have to first understand, okay, A overlapping B, of course, is this part. Okay, I hope you can tell. Rectangle A overlapping B is this portion here. Now, they said 3 units of A overlaps B. Okay, so if we understand this closely, we have to understand the significance of the numerator and the denominator first. So 3 units of A, which is this. You see out of the whole A, this 3 units of A is the one that overlaps B. All right. So to understand this closely, I hope you can tell that means this guy here will be treated as 3 units for now. Okay. Actually, I wouldn't write inside here, but for now, this is, considered as our 3 units here. Okay. What about this 8 here? All right. So guys, if you want to, have a clearer breakdown of how to know what your 3 and 8 means, maybe you can write down as a ratio first, 3 to 8. All right, then we decide what to, what the 3 and 8 each represent. So 3, we have already established it as this portion here, the overlap portion. Now, the 8, okay? 3 out of 8 of A. If you read this alone, you should be able to tell that your 8 units refers to the entire rectangle A. Right? When I say 3 out of 8 of something, then whatever action that happens later on means this denominator should refer to the entire of this item here. So 8 units is your A, 3 units is the overlapped portion from A. So that means if I want to write that down here, I can put it as shaded A to the whole of A. Okay, so SH in this case means the shaded portion, which is also the overlap portion. Right? Okay, now let's go on to the next fraction. So 1/4 of C overlaps B. Okay, so again, overlapping of C, all right, that overlaps with the rectangle B will be this portion here. So 1 unit of C overlaps B. So this shaded portion is treated as your 1 unit. Again, let's write down the ratio first. Okay, 1:4 first, then we can, at least don't have to worry about writing what numbers later on. So 1 unit of C is your shaded part of C. 4 units, the denominator here, of course, again, it refers to the whole of C. Similar explanation to how I did for the previous ratio. Okay, so 1/4 of C, blah, blah, blah. So that means your 4 units refers to the entire C. The 1 unit is the overlapping portion. All right, so you see, once you have broken it down like this into ratio forms, now notice I have 3 ratios now. Then I can proceed to do my common base. Identify your common base, or what some of you in your schools, they call it repeated identity. Okay, so I will first look at the first two ratio first. Okay, you of course can look at the first and last one first, but I'll look at first two. So first and second ratio, notice that I have something in common. A is common in both. You see, I have A here and A here. Okay, so 4 and 8, you have to make 4 and 8 units the same multiple. Okay, which will be changing this to 8. So of course, when this changes to 8, this whole thing times 2. Okay, now we still have one more ratio. You can don't need to underline your common base first. Look at the last ratio first. So this last ratio, unlikely it will have a common base with this, right? Okay, it's very unlikely because we have, this is like, AA, this is CC, all right? Okay, I forgot to mention something. When you have 3 sets of ratios, typically you should be expecting 2 pairs of common base. Okay, when you have only 2 sets of ratio, typically you will expect 1 pair of common base. All right, okay, so now I'm identifying my second pair of common base, which I hope you can see between this and this, your C is common. You see your C and C here. So if you notice C now here, this one becomes 20 units. And C here is 4, so I can change this 4 to 20, same number, same multiple. So you see times 5 times 5. Okay, then now I can underline the first pair of common base, circle out the second pair of common base. So the underlining and circling is just to differentiate the 2 different pairs. All right. Okay, so once this is done, now what we're going to do next is we are going to annotate down the respective units onto the diagram. Okay, now before I annotate, all right, I want you to notice that the diagram is actually made up of different areas, different portions. When I say different portions means you look at this as one portion, this one as another portion, this white part, another portion, this shader is another portion, and this part another portion. Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 portions to look at. And what we're going to do is we are going to write down the units for each of these 5 portions. All right. So I'm not interested in saying that, okay, A now is 8 units. Okay, for now, I'm not very interested in that simply because there's overlapping areas. I think what would be more helpful is to find out the units for the unoverlapped areas. All right. So that would definitely be helpful moving forward when you solve the question. Okay. So whatever we know now, shaded A, let me start with the shaded first. That'll be the easiest in this case. Shaded part of A, which also means the overlap part here, right? Of A overlapping B. This guy here, this shaded part here will be 3 units. Okay, so the diagram shouldn't be too clean. Okay, we should be seeing some writings in here. Shaded part of C, which is this part here, the overlap part between C and B is 5 units. So I'm going to transfer that down here. Okay, now, and of course, I need to work on this unit here, like we mentioned just now, this part. So this part, okay, we call it the unshaded part of A. All right, so when I say unshaded A means unshaded parts of the whole of A. Now, how do I know what's this? So you have to look back at this ratio. This will be helpful. The whole of A is 8 units. That means this whole thing is 8 units. Now, this is already 3. So this unshaded part of A simply is 8U minus away the 3U. Okay, because together they must be 8 units. We're going to do the same for B, unshaded part of B. Remember to write it back down here, 5 units. Okay, annotate in here. This part, let's call it the unshaded part of B. Unshaded part of C first. All right. So unshaded part of B, you can do it later or now also can. So unshaded part of C, again, looking at the whole of C, this one. 20 units is the whole of C. All right. Then the shaded part of C, which is this overlapping part, is already, I already see that's 5 units. So to find this white color portion, simply your 20 minus 5. Okay, I hope we're cool here. Then let's go on to the final unshaded B. All right, so whichever you want to, if you want to flip these 2 steps around, it's okay also. So unshaded part of B, you got to use the whole of B, which is 10 units, to minus away these 2 gray areas here. So the whole of 10 units is this. This is whole 10 units minus away 3 minus away 5 in order to get this white portion. So 10 minus 3 minus 5. Again, annotate it back down here. All right. Now, we can finally solve the question. So let's read back. They say, what fraction of the figure is shaded? Okay, so when they say what fraction of the figure is shaded, what they want is the shaded out of the whole figure. Now, this is where some of you, to find the whole figure, a lot of you would have done this, okay? You will happily tell me, say, don't write this down, this is the wrong one. You will happily tell me, say, okay, total units, I just look at A, B, and C, just add them up. You tell me 8 plus 10 plus 20. Now, this is very wrong because, do not forget, 8 and 10 and 20, when added up, it only applies if the three rectangles are not overlapping each other. So imagine you lay them out side by side. Okay, lay them out separately. This is A, this is B, this is C, right? Then these three add up will be your total units here. Okay, so just imagine like exposed surface area. You learn that in science. When they're spread out like that, then of course the exposed surface area is larger than if they're overlapping together. Because when they overlap together, the surface area gets smaller. So the number of units should be lesser than the sum of this. All right, the total units here must be lesser than this sum. All right, so we shouldn't be taking 8 plus 10 plus 20. Now, of course, then some of you will say that, okay, let's take 8 plus 10 plus 20 and minus the shaded parts. Now, I agree with that. Okay, I don't disagree. Now, however, I would discourage that idea of using that method because there are some questions whereby it requires you to subtract away this overlap parts twice. Okay, so for example, there are some questions whereby they say that, okay, I've cut out this portion. This is probably, it's like a piece of paper and I managed to cut out this portion, I cut out this portion. Then for that kind of question, all right, for especially if we're talking about overlapped papers like that, that I cut out this, then that kind of question, I will have to subtract this twice already. Minus 3u twice, minus 5u twice. However, in this scenario, minusing once should be enough because we're talking about the other layer underneath. It's still part of the total. We just want to remove the top layer. Okay, so I mean, as you can tell, it's pretty confusing, right? To decide, is it subtraction once or subtraction twice, under which scenarios I do that. Okay, so let's avoid that. So the better method, which I really strongly suggest to find your total, is to add up the units that you have already written down here. It's really like the addition method instead of the subtraction method, which is a lot more clear-cut, all right? Because you are just simply adding up the units from every portion that is like a jigsaw puzzle piece together. All right, so your total here, simply just take your 5u plus 3u plus 2u plus 5u plus 15u, which is what I just said, this whole thing. Okay, this is really the safest way to find your total units in this whole thing. All right, then of course, like I said just now, I need the shaded units. So shaded units, just look at the, of course, just add up these two, 3 and 5. And here we go. We can write down our fraction shaded out of the total, which is our 8 out of 30. So notice this question, they did not provide us with any actual areas or actual like lengths. Everything is just dealing with units here. So that's where your units, once you have got this already, then you can just safely put them into a fraction as per required. Remember to simplify it. Okay, so that would be the answer.